Division theorem is all about distributing a given number A to say informally to B people in such a way that everyone will be getting equal share and whatever is remaining cannot be distributed further. For example, the given number is A and the number of people is B. We want to distribute the number A to equally to B people so that something may remain at the end, but the remaining cannot be further divided or distributed equally. For example, if we consider a small example of dividing or distributing chocolates among a few kids, suppose that we have seven chocolates. And suppose that we want to distribute this among three kids. So we have three kids here. I don't know my drawing is very beautiful or not. Anyway, it's trying. So we have seven chocolates and three kids. So how do we distribute? Initially, we give one piece each to each kid. So 7 minus 3, now remaining is 4. Can further distribution of chocolates possible equally among these kids? Of course, we have four chocolates left now, and we can give one each to everybody once again. So one each again to everybody else. And what is now remaining? Now 7 minus 3 plus 3, that's equal to 1. Or 7 minus 2 into 3 equal to 1. That is, every kid got two pieces of chocolates from the initial seven chocolates, and now one is remaining, and that cannot be further distributed equally without creating any trouble. So we stop here. Therefore, what we get here is that 7 is equal to 2 into 3 plus 1. This is basically the general structure of the division theorem statement. If you want to state it formally, we can state it like this. So the statement of division theorem is like this. Division theorem. Let A and B are integers with B greater than 0. What we are going to say is the following. There exist unique integers Q R such that A is equal to BQ plus R. Not only that, no further distribution is possible. That means that 0 less than or equal to R less than B. This is what the division theorem precisely states. Once we are given a statement in mathematics, we are supposed to establish it using existing results, existing notions, existing concepts. That establishing way is known as proving a theorem. Since we have stated that this statement is true, this is a theorem, we are now expected to prove it. So how do we prove this? So before proving, we have to just take a stock of what exactly we have. We have A and B, two integers given to us. And what are the things we have to find out? We have to find two integers Q and R. Not only that, we have to verify that these two integers Q and R are unique. Not only that, we have to verify afterwards that 0 less than or equal to R less than B. That means that we need an R which is greater than or equal to 0, that's it's non-negative, and at the same time it has to be less than B. If it's greater than B, what will happen? That means that further distribution is possible. We can take out another B pieces from this R that we don't want to allow. So the first part of division theorem is to prove that there exists Q and R. In the first part, afterwards we will show that this Q and R are unique. Then we need to verify that the R we found satisfies the given condition. So first part, we will call that to be the part of existence or existence part. In the proof, we have the existence part coming first. So what do we have to find? We have to find Q and R. But one thing we have to remember, A is a number given to us, and B is also a number given to us. So if R we are able to find, then R is equal to A minus PQ, or in other words, we have Q is the only thing unknown to us when once we have found R. Therefore, once R is known to us, A is already known to us, B is already known to us. Therefore, from the equation A is equal to PQ plus R, we can actually solve for this Q. Therefore, our task is now limited to finding out one R. So, what is R? R is nothing but A minus PQ. We have to find QR integers such that A is equal to PQ plus R, or A minus BQ equal to R. Okay, now we restrict ourselves to finding R, and after that we can easily find Q. Now, one more thing is that the R has to satisfy the condition 0 less than or equal to R less than B. But what is R now? R is now A minus PQ. Therefore, we want to find out Q is an integer. We want to find out A minus PQ such that A minus PQ is greater than or equal to 0, A minus PQ is less than B. But what are the possible choices of Q? Q can be anything. The only restriction is on R, therefore Q can be any integer. But the only condition is that once we find this Q, we must get A is equal to BQ plus R, and R must satisfy certain conditions. So we can keep on varying this Q throughout the set of integers and try to find one A minus QB such that it is greater than or equal to 0 and it is less than B. So we are going to focus to one set, the set of all A minus QB, right? S is equal to the set of all A minus QB, where Q is an integer. Therefore, this set consists of elements of the form A minus 0B, A minus plus or minus 1B, A minus plus or minus 2B, etc. So we have to locate one A minus QB in such a way that A minus QB, we want to call that to be R, that A minus QB is greater than or equal to 0. So the very first question we have to ask now is that, can we definitely say that S contains some element that's greater than or equal to 0? So we are asking if A minus QB can be greater than or equal to 0 for some choice of Q. We will try to divide it into two cases. The first case is that A greater than or equal to 0. Just recall once again, the question is that, can we find out some non-negative element in yes? So this is the question we have. Does yes contain a non-negative element? So we are dividing it into two cases. Case 1, in which A is greater than or equal to 0. So remember that we have A minus 0 be there in S. If A is greater than or equal to 0, A minus 0b is equal to A, that itself is greater than or equal to 0. So in that case, we have a non-negative element in S. A minus 0b is equal to A, belongs to S, and it is greater than or equal to 0. So in this first case, we are done. So what is the second case? In the second case, we have to take the remaining thing. What is it? A less than 0. In this case, we have to be a little bit careful because the situation actually becomes a little bit more complicated. Suppose that we consider this line. Suppose that we are taking this number line where 0 is located here and A is located here. Suppose that B is a stick of this much length. Now the question is that how many B's we have to take, so that after taking those many B's, we will be definitely covering the negativeness of A. So remember that the minimum size of B is going to be the minimum size of B. Before that, let me draw this line. The minimum size of B, what is B? B belongs to Z and B is greater than 0. Therefore, B is greater than or equal to 1. The minimum size of B is therefore 1. So If we are taking b steps and if we have to cross minus a, for example, suppose that a is minus 15, so we have to take if b is at least 1, so assume that b is the least possible thing, that is 1 itself. Therefore, if you take 15 steps, if you take 15 steps, we will be definitely crossing this a. Therefore, if b is equal to 2, 15 steps are not actually necessary. If b is equal to 2 and a is equal to 15, in fact, 8 steps are more than enough. Therefore, the worst case when b is equal to 1, we need to take only minus a steps. That is for a minus bq. A minus bq is nothing but a plus b into minus q to be greater than or equal to 0. What we just now observed is that we can take for adding to a, we need to take how many times we need to take? We need to take maximum 15. Adding to minus 15, we need to take maximum 15 steps. That means that minus q is going to be equal to 15 steps, that is minus a or q equal to a. Therefore, if q equal to a, what happens then? A minus bq equal to a minus ba, that is equal to a into 1 minus b. Just remember that this is less than 0 and b is greater than or equal to 1. Therefore, this is b is greater than or equal to 1, therefore 1 minus b is less than or equal to 0, therefore the total product has to be greater than or equal to 0. Therefore, if we choose q to be equal to a, we will be getting a minus bq to be greater than or equal to 0. Therefore, there exists a non-negative element in yes, in this case also. Therefore, there are only two cases. One is that a can be greater than or equal to 0, other is that a can be less than 0. In either case, we will be getting yes contains a non-negative element. Okay. So in the first part, what we verified is that yes, the setup for a minus bq definitely contains a non-negative element. Now, recall that from the previous step, we wanted to find r equal to a minus bq and we wanted that to be greater than or equal to 0. Therefore, we wanted to find a minus bq equal to r from the set S, but at the same time, we wanted that a minus bq to be greater than or equal to 0. So we are not interested in the negative elements in S. We will filter them out and take S1 equal to all non-negative elements in S, or other words, S1 is equal to S intersection W, where W is the set of all whole numbers, that is 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. So what we have just now observed is that S contains at least one non-negative element, therefore this is not phi. Not only that, S intersection W is going to be a subset of W. Now we have to recall an important axiom. That axiom is nothing but the well ordering principle. The well ordering principle is a very simple statement. It says that if you take a non-empty subset of the set of all whole numbers, that is, if a subset of W and a not equal to phi, then that non-empty subset will definitely have a least element in it. Then A contains a least element. So this property we cannot actually verify because we are taking it to be an axiom and it's quite obvious. What, for example, suppose that you are choosing A to be the set of all even whole numbers, then we are having 0, 2, 4, etc. And the least limit is nothing but 0. And whatever non-empty subset we choose from the set of all whole numbers, the axiom guarantees that there exists a least element in that set. So now observe that our S1 is a subset of W and it is non-empty. Therefore, there is a least element in. Therefore, since S1 subset of W S1 not equal to 5 non-empty, there is a least element in S1. And remember that S1 is a subset of S and S consists of elements of the form A minus QB. Therefore, that least element also will be of the form some A minus QB. Let A minus KB equal to R be the least in S1. So we have located one specific element from S1, that is the least element in S1, and we named it as R. Now the questions are remaining to be answered. They are the following. Is R greater than or equal to 0? Is R greater than or equal to 0? Yes, because we have chosen R from S1 and S1 is nothing but S intersection W and W is nothing but the set of all non-negative integers. Therefore, R has to be greater than or equal to 0. R has to be greater than or equal to 0. Now, the next question is R less than B? Now, in this case, we need to actually think a little bit. We don't know whether it's going to be less than B or not. For that, to show that something is true, sometimes direct methods won't work. In that case, we will use a method called the method of contradiction. In the method of contradiction, we will assume the negation of whatever we have to prove, and we will finally say that because of our assumption, we finally reached at a point which is absolutely wrong. So to show that R less than B, to verify that R less than B, we will assume that its negation is true. What is its negation? R less than B. The negation is that R is not less than B. When R is not less than B means that R has to be greater than or equal to B. Suppose R is greater than or equal to B on the contrary. On the other hand, we suppose that R is greater than or equal to B. But in that case, R minus B has to be greater than or equal to 0. But what is R? We have R is equal to A minus KB. This is A minus KB minus B greater than or equal to 0. But this is nothing but A minus B into A plus 1. This is greater than or equal to 0. But this looks like an element in S. But since it is greater than or equal to 0, this is an element in S1 also. Therefore, R minus B is an element of S1, but R minus B is less than R strictly, but R is what? Least in S1. But how can all these things happen simultaneously? R is the least level in S1, R minus B is also there in S1, but R minus B is less than S1. Sorry, R minus B is less than R. All these things together cannot happen, and we are arriving at a contradiction. Why this contradiction happened? Because we assumed something in the beginning and that's wrong. What is our assumption? R greater than or equal to B is what our assumption is. Therefore, this cannot be correct. Therefore, this cannot be correct, and therefore R has to be less than B. There is no other way. So we are getting R to be, therefore R has to be less than B. Already we have verified that by construction itself, R is greater than or equal to 0. Now R is less than B also. So we have located one R. By locating this R, we know that R is equal to A minus KB. We have already taken this notation. Then from this equation, we can find K also. So K is also found, R is also found. The existence of K, in fact, K, we wanted to call it as Q. The existence of K and existence of R and Q such that A minus A is equal to BQ plus R is now verified with the property that R is between 0 and B, R is strictly less than B, R can be equal to 0. That's verified. So the existence is completely verified, and the Q and R found satisfies the given property. In fact, R satisfies the given property. What is next remaining for us now? We have to show that the Q and R we found just now, it is unique. Now, there is a possible question. Do we really need to verify that this Q and R are unique? At least in the case of R, we found R using some constructing some set, and we finally said that R is going to be the least non-negative in that particular set. But can there be another element which is also least? That is not possible. But in that case, R is going to be unique anyway. So what is the need of proving the uniqueness once again? Now, the answer to this is that, see, we were finding R using some technique, that is our own technique. The diffusion theorem does not ask for that particular technique. Somebody else can come and say that I have found R using some other technique. But in that case, he or she might have found R to be not the least, but maybe with some other property. So in that case, R need not be R that he found or she found need not be the R we found. Therefore, uniqueness is not guaranteed just by retracing the steps that we have performed. Uniqueness has to be proved using some other method. Okay, for proving the uniqueness, once again, suppose that in mathematics we have to prove something is unique. The most of the times the technique that works is that suppose that it is not so. That means that suppose that it is not unique, and suppose that there exists some other elements satisfying the same property. So next part is to prove uniqueness of Q and R. If Q and R we found is not unique, then there exists another Q dash and R dash satisfying exactly the same properties. Suppose QR is such that 0 less than or equal to R less than B, and A is equal to BQ plus R. Q dash and R dash are such that A is equal to BQ dash plus R dash, at same time 0 less than or equal to R dash less than B. Suppose that we are finding at least one more pair of Q and R satisfying exactly the same property. So we have A is equal to BQ plus R, and we have A is equal to BQ dash plus R dash. Therefore, both represent BQ dash plus R dash, and BQ plus R both represent A. Therefore, they have to be the same. They are the same. BQ plus R is equal to BQ dash plus R dash. If you bring BQ and BQ dash to one side and R dash and R to another side, then we get B into Q minus Q dash is equal to R dash minus R. Now let us take modulus on both sides. B is positive, therefore taking modulus on B will not make any difference. B into Q minus Q dash equal to modulus of R dash minus R. Now one small observation. We have 0 here, B here, R somewhere here, R dash somewhere here. What is this modulus of R dash minus R? It is nothing but the distance between, not difference, it is a distance between R and R dash. But these two numbers are lying between 0 and B, therefore, and they are not equal to B, they are strictly less than B, therefore the distance also has to be less than B. So observation is this: modulus of R dash minus R has to be less than B, and it is going to be greater than or equal to 0 because its absolute value has to be greater than or equal to 0. But at the same time, we are claiming that this number is a multiple of B. What is the only multiple of B less than B and can be equal to 0? What is the only multiple of B? We know that that multiple is nothing but it's going to be the 0 multiple. Therefore, modulus of R dash minus R has to be 0 because it's a 0 multiple. It's a multiple of B. It is less than B. It is non-negative. All these conditions, if it has to satisfy, then that multiple has to be the 0 multiple. Therefore, it has to be 0. Therefore, R dash must be equal to R. R dash equal to R means that R dash minus R equal to 0. Therefore, B into Q minus Q dash equal to 0. So, B into Q dash minus Q, or B into Q minus Q dash equal to 0. B is not 0. The product of two numbers equal to 0. Therefore, Q minus Q dash must be equal to 0. Q minus Q dash equal to 0 since B is greater than 0 and not 0. Therefore, Q must be equal to Q dash. So, what is the conclusion? We have taken R dash to be two numbers, Q dash to be two numbers, satisfying all these properties. So, finally, we are arriving at the conclusion that this is not possible. So, Q and R is unique. They have to be unique. Therefore, the division theorem is completely verified. We proved that there exists Q and R satisfy certain properties, and we proved that such a pair Q and R has to be unique. Hence, division theorem is completely verified. Now we just demonstrate division theorem using some examples. So division theorem says that A is equal to BQ plus R. Just recall A is equal to BQ plus R with 0 less than or equal to R less than B. And condition on B is that B is A, B in Z, B we have taken to be greater than 0. So suppose 25 is A and 4 is B. So 25 equal to how many times we can take B? It's equal to 4 into 6 plus what is remaining? 1. Therefore, this is R, this is less than B, greater than 0. This is now B, and this is our B. Now, what about minus 25? We have to be a little bit careful here. Minus 25 equal to, we need the remainder to be always positive. So, be careful. 4 into 7, right? Not 7, minus 7, that is minus 28 plus 3. Just see that in the negative case, when we have a negative, we have to be a little bit careful. Now, 30 and 6, 30 equal to 6 to 5. So in this case, it's very clear. So in the negative case also, we need to, in the negative case only, we need to be actually very careful that we should cross that negative minus a, but we should cross that integer a, then only we should take actually the integer. So negative case, you have to be really careful. In the division theorem, the numbers q and this r, we have already mentioned that q is called as the quotient and r as the remainder. We have two more notations. By a div b, we mean the quotient q. By a mod b, we mean the remainder r. Therefore, 25 mod 4, that is equal to 1, and 25 div 4 is equal to 6. These are two important notions related to the division theorem, coming from the division theorem. And one more important thing is that in some textbooks actually call this division theorem by the name division algorithm. This is actually a little bit confusing because this division theorem is not at all giving any particular algorithm for finding the quotient and remainder. We have to manually do that. But somehow, historically, some people call this division theorem as division algorithm also. We stop this session by the proof of this division theorem, and we will be continuing with few more interesting results in number theory in our next session. Thank you very much.